Talking about how kids can't read. Be speaking like this though, like pigeon
It's
English.
not just literacy. It's not just literacy, and it's not just like lack of content knowledge. It's not just critical thinking skills. It's basic thinking skills. My students can decode almost nothing. They cannot apply in
Controversial topic. Get rid of public schools. Get rid of them. They're useless. The teachers get overpaid for little to minimal work. Kids don't learn anything. Get rid of them.
inference. They cannot process questions that are longer than a sentence. They cannot connect cause and effect. They can't track multi-step ideas like in a political cartoon. And it's scaring me a little. Like, I see it every single day. I had a kid yesterday. 4 kids, actually. This happened in every class. We were doing guided notes. Supposed to be a real easy day. It was review. They wrote down Maryland was founded as a safe haven for Catholics. It was on the board.
Okay.
They wrote it down. And before we moved on, I call on a student and I ask, hey, where were the Catholics? One more time. And these students, what they do is they look at me, and then they look at their notes, and then they look at the board. They look back at their notes. And some of them never answered me. They never figured out the answer.
So a couple of weeks ago, I did a video on this particular channel where I talked about the viral video of a Philadelphia high school student who, by the way, was at a charter school, passing around a cue card to students in his class. By the way, these are upperclassmen. They should have been close to graduating, only to reveal to us out here in the audience that those kids could not read basic sentences. And if you guys don't recall, let me give you a little bit of an excerpt of that so you can understand exactly what was going on.
Read that in this part for me.
She wore a suit, clothes that were...
What now?
Extra...
Hold up, wait. She can't read? Silhouette?
ordinary, but somewhat Gertrude?
No, explain what that means.
I don't know. She wore a
silhouette of clothes that were extraordinary, but somewhat
clothes that were
gouch.
Bitch, I don't know that word. I don't even know how to read. I don't know why I did.
Now, of course, this young man actually did a follow-up video where the kids could actually
What are they doing in school that is not allowing them to fucking perform? What the fuck's going on with the public school system? This is why I take it away. I mean, straight up just take it away at this point. Throw it all in the trash. Set it on fire.
sound out the words because it didn't have complicated words like extraordinary. By the way, I would have accepted extraordinary even in that regard, but some of them just flubbed it right away in the original video. But it was painfully obvious that even in that scenario, where most of the kids could pronounce these very easy words, and again, a little bit of an unusual sentence, that they actually had no idea what the sentence meant.
Colonel asked the choir to accommodate the governor's schedule.
What does that mean?
But he's asking the choir to accommodate to the governor's schedule, right?
Yeah, in your own words.
There's a governor's schedule, and so the colonel is asking the choir to accommodate to it.
In your own words.
I don't know, bro.
Now, in that particular video, we focused on the school and how they wanted to punish the student for supposedly, according to the school, according to a statement that allegedly they released, taking the kids out of context. Again, the Jenks nephew excuse, when absolutely they were not being taken out of context. And of course, they tried to stop him from producing further videos, even though, again, what this kid inadvertently ended up launching was a viral trend where this experiment has been repeated time and time again to absolutely devastating results. But the thing is, while these make funny videos, while they might make you sad in just a little bit of time of watching them, the fact is, it's actually significantly worse than you could possibly imagine, because the problem with Gen Z and then Gen Alpha not being able to read goes far beyond this, and it's due to methods that were adopted that, again, were mixed in with the education system of millennials that are now being taken to an extreme with Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Again, the children of those...
It's that no kid left behind bullshit that they were feeding me when I was going through school. It would just turn. It was the Bush administration that first brought it into power. I'm pretty sure that's what had to do with it.
Those millennials. And yeah, it's a disaster. And when you pair that with smartphones and AI, it's completely over for the future generation. So this is what we're going to talk about today. This is what we're going to discuss. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Oh, give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
So I want to give credit to friend of the channel, Sydney Watson, for doing this video right here that you definitely should check out. And it's linked in the description that covers similar territory that I'm going to cover today. And also introduce a bunch of new clips that I never saw before that I'm actually going to be pulling from her video in certain regards where I couldn't actually track down the original. But the thing that I think is missed in her commentary and was missed in my overall commentary, even though I have referenced this before, is the fact that there was a major change in education that, of course, dates back to the 60s, was starting to be inserted in the 1980s, and really took hold in the 90s. And this was the pivot away from what is called a phonics-based curriculum. And this is exemplified perfectly right here in this clip that I found on Instagram.com that I just want to play for you so I can further explain this particular concept.
Wait, tell me your child does this too. They're reading a sentence.
Okay.
And they say a word that makes sense, but it obviously isn't the word in the book. Something like pony, but the word in the book is horse. It makes sense, but it's obvious that they didn't read the word. That is a sign that they might be guessing or relying on the pictures.
So look, this mom explains this concept very adequately right there, where you have words that are similar, and
so what, are they getting pictures to help them out all the time?
But in reality, your child substituting one for the other when the words are so different obviously makes it clear that that child is not in fact reading those words. That child is not in fact sounding it out. And while she proposes as a quick fix, making the kid go back and sound out the word, the fact is the education system is deliberately teaching your child to not read in this way, because this is called guessing. This is called letter/word association.
Guessing,
with
it's
the
just flat out just being fucking wrong.
Is in fact a major issue that we have in the United States of America, because what is being described right here is known as a 3-cueing system, which essentially tries to get children, according to this theory, to understand the concept of what is being said using context and whatnot of surrounding words, but in reality, they don't actually want them to sound it out, to actually form verbal conjugations or combinations, to do any of that thing to get the sound of the word, and then try to identify the meaning of the word through the context clues after they pronounce it correctly. What they're trying to do is essentially produce guesses, go back to your recall in terms of memory, not where you would typically store, your ability to process and actually develop your ability to...
So wait, they're just guessing at all what they're doing? No shit. Now get to the point.
Read in a proper way. And this is a disaster in the United States education system. And of course, it was implemented for the best of intentions, for the reasons that we always implement stupid ass ideas in the United States of America. And this is to solve the supposed achievement gap that is due to the fact that we weren't being culturally represented in our education system. So this theory was spawned from a guy called Ken Goodman, who of course was a stupid ass left-wing professor in the 1960s.
It's that DEI bullshit. Has to be.
Who believed that reading was a psycholinguistic game, and that what readers actually are doing is guessing. And this was also based on the idea that reading was something that was like within our nature. And I know technically everything is developed by humans and thus believed to be within our nature, but you really need to understand that in terms of written language,
if you think about speaking, yeah, that's in our nature. But the written language is something of a construct. How can they just say it's just in our nature when we constructed it? How does that work?
Languages in the entire history of the world. There are 4 different examples, or somewhere thereabouts, maybe it's down to as little as 3, of independent written languages being created, and every other written language is essentially a spawn off of those 4, off of those seed languages, or seed letter systems, or seed alphabets. So no, in no way, shape, or form is reading something that is in fact intuitive. And in fact, study after study has shown time and time again that this is not the way that people actually read. This is not the way good readers read. In fact, what actually happens over time is that as you develop the skill of reading, you are instantly in your brain processing and decoding letters, figuring out the pronunciation, what
it's
the
like
proper
Da Vinci
conjugation of a certain verb means in this particular context. And then if you don't get the word, then you go to the context clues to try to figure it out. And again, this is in no way, shape, or form akin to guessing like this theory proposes. So obviously, we had a great education system in the United States of America. This was something that had been basically brought out of our tradition of basically relying on the Protestant work ethic and Protestant teaching method that was developed largely in Massachusetts. And in fact, a lot of these Protestant teachers from Massachusetts ended up going down to the South and working on education there, improving outcomes there. So with that basic standard from this Protestant...
Yeah, when teaching was still good. And teachers wanted to learn, or wanted to learn how to teach and teach the right things to kids.
Roots, and this being embedded in our tradition, and of course us developing a phonics-based learning method that was obviously working in the United States of America, the federal government and a bunch of local governments decided to throw all of that out and go with this new system because they thought this new theory was wonderful, and they started implementing it in the 80s, and by the 1990s, this started to become the dominant system in the United States of America, and unsurprisingly, the exact problem that they wanted to solve, the achievement gap, the reading gap between blacks and whites, it ended up expanding. It ended up getting significantly worse because it turns out all these theories about how the SATs are culturally biased because they expect black people to speak English in a nation where the dominant language is English and not Ebonics or African American vernacular English and all this other nonsense that is put forward by these left-wing people. It turns out that was actually not true, and trying to dumb down the curriculum and play this guess and check game ultimately ended up leading to a whole generation of kids that couldn't read. And by the way, the gap is even wider amongst black and white students in this particular regard. This is why you have so many schools in Chicago and in Baltimore where precisely 0 students are proficient in reading, and you have videos from teachers that are absolutely devastating where they talk about how they teach 8th grade, but they don't even have any students that are at a 5th grade reading level, let alone having students at an 8th grade reading level.
That's insane. 8th graders not being able to read 5th grade letter work? That's insane to me.
In their particular class.
Sometimes these kids, I don't understand how they ended up to this point. You know what I mean?
They're just getting passed along.
I teach 8th grade history, and I have 110-ish students.
The problem is the public schools want to see the numbers of the graduation. So what they end up doing is they start to inflate those numbers and pass along kids and lower the test standards so that they can pass them along and then have them graduate. Because the more times they graduate, the more that graduate on average, the more money the public school gets in funding as well as recognition.
2 of them are reading on grade level right now. 18 of them are at a kindergarten level. 55 of those students are between a 2nd and 4th grade level. That's a lot of them. And that's typical of what I've seen lately from students.
So while I hear this particular woman talking about how you should make your kid go back and start sounding it out.
So here's a quick fix. Have them go back and sound out the word. Check the sounds. Not just moving on because it sounds right and makes sense in the story, but you need to make sure that it looks right. What they're seeing is what they're saying. If your child is doing this, comment "say this," and I will send you exactly what to say while they're reading.
It's actually a problem that is significantly deeper than that, because essentially this is one of the most discredited ways to teach children how to read, one of the most failed methods in the history of the country, and a bunch of schools have actually pledged to phase it out over time. But the fact is, you have the parents who learned to read this way, aka did not actually learn to read, and that's why they're completely unprepared by the time that they go to university, and they're incapable of teaching their kids how to actually sound out words, how to...
See, but it's the priority of the parents to be the ones that ultimately govern over their kids' financial as well as education. It shouldn't be that of the public school system. Public school system's there to help you out, but it's not to do everything for you.
Actually decode words. And guess what? Even though schools are supposedly trying to phase this out, if you go to a K through 2 school in the United States of America, kindergarten through 2nd grade, there is a 75% chance that your school is teaching your kid not to read, because this is not actually teaching them how to read with this discredited
So what are they
method.
teaching
and by the
them?
way, when you actually shift away from this,
What's
when
the
you try to
purpose of
undo
it
the
having
damage of
public
this,
school then?
as we've seen with the state of Mississippi, again, one of the poorest states in the United States of America.
Hey,
one of
I
the
heard
blackest
Mississippi
states, in
came
fact,
up,
the
though.
blackest state in the United States of America, reading scores end up rising exponentially.
They call it the Mississippi Miracle.
It truly is. In 2013, we were 49th in America in reading, and now we're number 9, which is crazy.
So what are they
Fourth
doing
grade
differently?
African-American students are number 3 in math and reading, and then Hispanic students, 4th grade, are number 1 in math and number 2 in reading. I mean, that's amazing.
Amanda Malone is the state literacy director and explains that they also changed the way they teach children to read.
Tapping hand up. Tapping hand up.
No longer using pictures, and instead teaching them how to structure sounds with the letters they see.
Without.
When I was trained to be a teacher, most of my training was through balanced literacy. It focuses a lot on cueing. I like to use the word guessing, looking at a picture and try to guess what's going on. Look at the beginning sound of a word and try to guess.
So is it
You see the
Pictionary
word
that we're playing?
cow,
Or are we
and you see
teaching
the
them how to
C,
read?
But you are a child and you don't know, so you kind of, could it be car? Could it be?
That's an excellent example.
This is what DEI does to a system. It just erodes it from the inside out. I bet you this is a DEI hire. You can't be racist. You can't be doing this. You can't be doing that. Rather than getting the job done where it needs to be.
Mississippi ended up going from 49th in the NAEP score, which judges 4th graders at their reading level and math levels, all the way to 9th. And the largest gains were among the Black and Hispanic students in terms of reading, because it turns out the phonics method actually works. So if you find that your kid is not reading this way, they're doing this guess and check method, what you should probably do is try to introduce them to the phonics method of reading. And by the way, if your school's not teaching it, buy Hooked on Phonics, which is a private program that you could put on for your kids that actually instructs them in that method. And by the way, if you're a millennial and you can barely read because you've been doing this 3 cueing method your whole life, then maybe you need to get on that Hooked on Phonics yourself. Now, while I gave you the example of a horse versus a pony, even though those are completely different words, and by the way, they do actually have a different meaning, and that distinction, it does matter in a great number of contexts. I want
Horse
you to
is definitely
understand
bigger than a
that it
pony.
goes
I can
beyond
tell you that right
example
now.
Where you in your head might be a little bit skeptical of what I'm presenting to you, and you might think to yourself, well, Sean, actually, that's actually a perfectly
People
fine
can't
interchange,
read,
and
man.
we should do the guess and check method.
Yeah, we're so cooked.
But get a load of this example.
We are fucking cooked. If the next generation can barely read, imagine having to do the basic. Like, how do you get a job? Like, if you can't read, like you have to read the policy or whatnot before you get them in. You have to read what you have to bring into work, right? Like, what the fuck?
That again, I'm pulling from Sydney's video, that is actually correct. I need you guys to understand that it's actually technically factual. It's actually considered perfectly fine because, again, the 3 cueing method is still too popular in the United States of America. It should be thrown out in the dustbin of history.
Yeah, it should be
we should
fucking
never hear the cursed
dumpster
name
fire
of
that
this
shit.
non-reading method ever again. But get a load of this example.
Everybody wants to bash on Gen Z, but did you guys know that Gen Alpha can't read? I was talking to one of our church kids, and he very boldly told me, yeah, I don't know how to read, and neither does anybody in my class. Mind you, this kid is starting 5th grade in August, okay? And I thought he was playing, so I told him, kids will do anything for money. So I was like, I'll give you $10 if you could tell me what this bag says. It said chips in giant letters. And I said, you could sound it out, you could try spelling it or whatever to help you read it. Because I thought he was lying. So this dude goes, CHIPS. And I go, what does that say? And he goes, potatoes. Y'all, we're cooked.
Yeah, that's right. You have a kid in 5th grade, according to this particular scenario, that can actually spell out the individual letters for
He's
the
not
word
wrong,
chips.
though.
But since he's not taught based on the phonics method, where
Chips
you're
are
actually
potatoes.
comboing the sounds that each individual letter or pairs of letters actually have, because, you know, CH is a ch
I get he gets
sound
an A for
rather than the
effort,
C sound and
but an
the H
F for
sound
fucking
separately. There's a
grammar
combination there.
and
The kid actually
pronunciation.
says potatoes. And while you might laugh, while you might think we're done, that lady ended up saying we're cooked in that particular scenario. The worst part about that is that answer, potatoes, is correct.
Yeah,
It's
he's
not
right. He's
wrong.
definitely right.
It is not an error. It is not a bug. In fact, if this kid would have said CHIPS, pronounced Doritos, that would also be correct, because remember, they're just
no
trying
kidding.
to get a holistic feel so you can understand this. And much like in the same way, a pony and a horse are completely different words because
Definitely
they're considered
different.
closely associated, this would be considered a correct answer. A correct answer is CHIPS equals potatoes. Now again, from the Sydney video, linked in the description of this video, we have this other clip that's also absolutely devastating, where we have a student who, again,
What's
is
going
a
on with the
functioning student
world?
that must have learned to read from his parents. And yeah, there's...
You think about the world and where it's gonna be, and you know, back in the 1960s, everyone had flying cars and everything, and that's what they thought of us nowadays. But no, we have a bunch of idiots now. Bunch of fucking morons.
There's a description of an assignment, and I just need you guys to understand
Going backwards
what grade
in
level
time.
this assignment is assigned to, because I believe he said he was a sophomore or a junior.
Hearing people talk about how kids in this generation cannot read anymore, it reminded me of an assignment that I got in my English class. Keep in mind I'm a junior in high school. This was our assignment. Are we serious? And kids were getting answers wrong. They were getting some of these wrong. This is elementary level work. Oh my god. Like, I should not be able to take a nap in my English class and still pass with like a 95, I think. I should be up and doing work.
To be clear, the assignment says, circle the confusing word that best completes each given sentence. By confusing words, they mean words that are spelled different but look similar to another word, like loose and lose, quite and quiet. We are so fundamentally screwed. This is unfortunately the type of thing that we were doing in primary school as 6-year-olds. Choose and chose, just by the way, are just different tenses of the same verb.
Guys, this is scary. This is terrifying. This is absolutely horrifying. And
Yeah,
I
no
remember that
shit.
story of a girl who ended up graduating high school while being illiterate, because what she was doing was using her smartphone to take pictures of the text, having the basically Google read it to her and give her answers to questions in that manner.
These
and she was
people
able to
vote
slip by high
or are
school.
going to
But
vote.
It turns out that is becoming the norm.
Could you imagine
These kids are
how
using
much
AI
other
as a
people?
way to
Could you imagine how many other people are at this level of reading? Especially my generation, the millennial generation. And then more so and now with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they get to vote. Like, they have voting power. That's insane.
avoid reading, and the school is not teaching them to develop the skills in order to actually engage with words that they don't have a picture in their head associated with it, which is a disaster in every possible way. And again, I will remind you that a lot of the negative things that we are seeing being portrayed in our schools.
You know what fixes this? Charter schools. Charter schools, you get basically a raffle ticket that you can go to any charter school of your choosing that you can want your kid to go to. And then that school basically gets the ticket, the golden ticket. They get the funding. And this way we get rid of public schools in its entirety.
System, they're intergenerational because millennials were taught that this was appropriate, that this was accurate, that this was the proper way to read, and it's being rewarded from Gen Alpha. And it's at the point right now where you have the AI combinations, so you have some teachers that actually can read, and they're looking at the kids just spitting out AI summaries of excerpts of books because you can't have them read whole entire books. And yeah, it's something that obviously should cause a great deal of panic, because while a lot of people are talking about how AI will eventually surpass all human intelligence, and in some regards, I understand that it technically has, but it's supposed to pass as an AI advancing beyond us, not humans actually going back behind current AI.
Yeah, no
we're going to be at
kidding.
a point in time where the AI of 2016 is going to be smarter than the children of 2030, because the children of 2030 have regressed to a point where they're absolute idiots. They're illiterate. And again, it is not by design in some kind of sinister way. It's by design in terms of this was actually the goal of the 3 queuing system, and it's been a disaster in every way. And again, I need to emphasize, multiple different scientific studies have said that this is a disaster, but it's been so embedded in the education system since the 80s and 90s that the teachers currently coming in learn to read that way, aka learn to not read that way. And this is why you have so many different scenarios where people can't say basic words. I mean, there was a video, again, clip from the Sidney Watsy video, credit where credit is due, over there. Go check it out, link in the description, where somebody couldn't say the word exemplifies and then couldn't identify the word exemplifies. And then I believe another person was questioning whether or not exemplifies actually is a word.
Read the index card.
The dog's unwearing loyalty, exemplified and unreciprocated emotional
Unreciprocated
dependency.
emotional.
Yeah. What's that mean?
It means I don't know.
Read the index card.
The dog's unwavering loyalty, exemplified, and unreciprocated emotional dependency.
What does that mean?
Exemplified means like, is that even a word?
Look, I'm trying to raise the alarm.
Jesus.
I'm trying to get your attention. I'm trying to get you alert on this particular.
We're so fucking cooked. It's just making the convenience of having a phone is making people dumber, is what's happening. Because then they just refer to the phone as the means of getting their information rather than figuring it out. Before, you never had a phone, or at least when you didn't have a phone back in the early 2000s, you know, you had to figure things out for yourself. And if you didn't, well, you're shit out of luck. But now, I don't know what to tell you, man. This is next level retardation. This is some fucked up shit here.
Issue, especially if you're somebody with young kids. Go out, spend the money, get hooked on phonics, check out what your school is actually doing, because even if your kid can read, they're surrounded by a bunch of idiots. I really don't know any other way to say this in a way that a lot of you millennial parents that learn to read from the 3 queuing system can understand, other than kids not learn good right now. Big problem, big disaster, big bad not learn good. We don't like that. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below, as usual.
Let's see what the comments have to say. I'm just curious. This is why we don't have the difference between equity and equality. Yeah, no shit. No Child Left Behind was the dumbest thing the government... Yeah, that's when the Bush administration was pushing that through in the early 2000s. Basically, they couldn't get all the kids on the same grade if one was failing. So they would have to dumb everything down so that one kid could pass. Society that can't read is a society that can be easily controlled. Yeah, I think that too. Let's do one more. Teacher admits her students are getting dumber every year, but doesn't mention the fact that her teachers union makes sure she gets a raise every year regardless of the outcome of the metrics. Yeah, that's the other thing. The school unions are big. And to get rid of a teacher that's bad, you're spending close to $1 million. I know that in Los Angeles, it takes upwards of $1.5 million to get a teacher fired from the union. $1.5 million. And if the teacher doesn't want to do anything, what they do is they keep them in a room in the downtown area. And they basically have them sit there for, 7 hours a day for the whole school day? It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Charter schools are the way to go. I mean, if you think about it, if you have the choice of picking where your kid goes to school rather than having to go to the school that's nearby, that's a big thing. But we don't have that. I mean, people don't have that option, which they should. It should be easy for them to choose which school that they go to. It'll help out with a lot of different things. I mean, if the one school is doing very poorly in the way they're addressing the concerns of the parents, then that school doesn't get any of the charter tickets. Man, we're so fucking done. We're so fucking cooked. This keeps going on. Son of a bitch.